You are at the right channel at the right time because we have a topic that's going to minister to your inner woman and your inner man. Don't move from this channel. Stay focused. The only thing I ask, if you are blessed, like, share, and subscribe. And let's continue to be a blessing to others by viewing this video. God bless you. Thank you once again, Spa Community, for clicking onto the channel. You have reached Pastor Gloria Ingram of Spa Women's Ministry, a ministry that deals with the inner woman. If you were here for the first time, I'm so glad you decided to click this channel because we deal with real issues for the real person on the inside, because we want to be sure we are well equipped to keep pushing ahead and moving forward. And this month of March, it is Women's National Month. And I want to go through scripture to identify certain women in the Bible and what we can learn from them. So this week, I want to look at Sarah. I want us to lean in on seeing how God can do the possible in a situation that looks impossible. Because this ministry teaches us to push ahead. Oftentimes, we may be presented with a situation in our lives that looks impossible. Maybe it's an element in our body. Maybe we don't have enough finances for our bills, or a marital issue, problems with our children that seem impossible. I have a situation in my life right now that seems impossible. And I'm constantly reminding myself that God can do the possible in a situation that looks impossible. And one of the things we have to often tell ourselves is not about how it's going to get done. It's about who gets it done. So when we get ourselves and our thoughts out of thinking, how is this going to happen? How am I going to make it? How am I going to come through this? We can start focusing on self and start thinking we have to make it happen. And this is why I chose Sarah, because Sarah and Abraham were up in age, and God told Abraham that he was going to bless them with a child. Abraham was 75 at that time. Sarah was 65. Well, it took 25 years later for God to come through. And in that time of waiting, they thought they should take matters into their own hands. So Sarah tells her husband to go ahead and sleep with their handmaiden Hagar. And so what does Abraham do? He goes ahead. He doesn't argue with that. He just goes ahead and sleeps with the maid servant. And they had a child, Ishmael. But Ishmael wasn't the promised seed that God told them that they would have. And what I like about this story is that it shows that oftentimes we're saying that we believe God, but in the thoughts of our minds, we have questions, we have reservations, we are laughing at the situation. We're already in a place of thinking this is impossible. It hasn't happened yet. But I want you to know that God can do the possible in any situation that looks impossible, because we find out as we read this story that God knew exactly that Sarah was laughing within herself. I want to read a little bit of it because I love this part when God exposes. I love this part when God exposes Sarah. And it says here in Genesis 18 in verse 10. Let's start at verse 11. It says, Abraham and Sarah were old and getting on in years. Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. So she laughed to herself. After I am worn out, my Lord is old. Will I have delight? But the Lord asked Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? Can I really have a baby when I'm old? Is anything impossible for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will come back to you, and in about a year, she will have a son. Sarah denied it. I did not laugh. Did she forget that she was talking about the omniscient God who knows all things? She said, because she was afraid. But he replied, no. God said, you did laugh. And it puzzled God, like, why did she laugh? This is who I am. I am God. I can do the impossible. Is there anything too hard for me? And that's a question that you and I have to ask ourselves as we continue to push ahead, as we continue to live in life and impossible situations pop up. Is there anything too hard for God? And then check the thoughts of our mind. What do we truly believe? David said in Psalms 27:13, he says, I had fainted unless I believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Verse 14 said, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he will strengthen thine heart. So we have to be in that place that although God has us waiting, that if he said it, he's going to bring it to pass. It's just we have to learn not to jump in and try to make things happen more quicker than they're supposed to, because then we're not operating with God's timing. We're not operating with his perfect timing. And his timing is what's best for us. We may not understand it, but again, we're not supposed to try to figure out how. We're supposed to understand who we're talking about. And we're talking about God. Nothing is too hard for him. And God fulfilled the promise. 25 years later, Abraham was 100, Sarah was 90, but they beheld their promised child, Isaac, which God said they would have. And Sarah named him Isaac because she said, God made me to laugh. So I want you to know today that God can make you laugh if you're in a situation that seems impossible. If you're in a situation where you're wondering, where is God? Is he ever going to show up? I want you to know God will show up. Stay in the posture of believing God. He will show up. If he said it, he's going to bring it to pass. But let us not be the reason for the lack of believing him, that what we are waiting for is delayed but not denied. So let us stay in the posture of believing God. I remember also in John 11 and the 40th verse, Jesus tells Martha, when her brother died, Lazarus, and he was behind in that cave, behind the stone for 4 days, she tells Jesus his body stinks by now. He's been there for 4 days. And Jesus says to her, tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God. And Jesus called Lazarus forth. I want you to know today, believe God for the impossible. Believe God that he can do the possible in an impossible situation, because we serve a God that can do all things, but the one thing he can't do is fail. God bless you, and you have a beautiful day. Believe God.